Hey, it's Merle. I'm a producer, director, editor, and film professor. I worked in television, won some awards, and I even have a film in the permanent collection at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In this podcast, I sit down with film professionals from all different backgrounds to talk about what inspires them, what advice they wish they had when they were just starting out, and above all, what it takes to create great content. So, let's go. Mark Carranceja is a creative professional and educator with 10 plus years of experience in media production and higher education. He graduated from CUNY Brooklyn College and the New School in New York with BAs and MFAs in film production and media studies, respectively. Mark launched his production company, Noisemaker Media, in 2002 and has produced content for Janet Jackson, The Roots, KRS-One, Biz Markie, Kid Capri, Busta Rhymes, A Tribe Called Quest, and more. And he's also done a ton of work for great organizations like Storm King Arts Center, Newburgh Boys and Girls Club, Thornwillow Press, and a bevy of indie bands for which he has done some of the most creative and captivating music videos. A creator to the core, let's just say he's a man of many talents. Mark, welcome to the show. You're blushing over there.
Thanks for having me. I'm super honored to be here. Thank you very much.
So, why don't we start out? How would you describe to someone who is unfamiliar with your work, like what is it that you do? Because you do so many things. So how would you describe yourself?
Wow. My wife could best describe what I do, and it's hard for me to sell what I do. But I started off as a DJ. That was like my primary entry into the creative world, even though I did some illustration on the side. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I am and what I do, but I'm a creator. That's what I am.
And when around was that? So you were DJing. So How long were you DJing for? And
I started back in 92, 93.
Oh my goodness.
Then started DJing clubs and hip hop events like 96, 97. Then got into music production at the same time.
Nice.
So that's kind of like the natural entryway into production if you're a DJ. But I was going to film school at the same time because I started filming rollerblading skate videos.
Nice.
So that was my other entry into film production. I had music and film kind of concurrently chasing each other and competing with my time. But I got into the School of Visual Arts right after high school on the strength of a skate video that I directed. So my grades sucked in high school, so I submitted my skate video, which was actually like a physical VHS tape that I produced, submitted it to the advisor, and they were like, oh, this is a first. So I got in, for the first year on the strength of a scholarship.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So wait, you didn't actually apply the traditional way. You just sent in your tape, and they were.
I was taking night classes at the School of Visual Arts. Then
Gotcha.
I just reached out to the advisor, like, how do I go through the non-traditional process of applying for the film production program? Because my grades suck, but then again, I'm doing really well in these night classes, or taking like continuing ed credits, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, I produced it, showed it to them. They're like, yeah, why don't you join us? You're pretty good.
That is amazing. So then filming wasn't sort of the end game until a certain point, until you decided to start taking classes, or like filmmaking?
There is no end game.
This is true.
It's all procedural, You kind of embrace that after clocking in so many hours and logging in so many hours in the editing room or whatever you're creating. It's a process. And in the beginning, you're focused on product. You want to show people, you want to prove to people that you're a great artist, you're a qualified professional. In the end, you're like, especially with teaching taught me that it's all procedural. It's all about embracing the process. And that's how it really started for me. Back then, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was an end game to this. But it was just a matter of, again, things competing. Like if music kind of like was leading the way and making me money at that time, I would chase that. Then eventually it would just converge back to film somehow because of just the network that we have in the city.
So you mentioned that it was through teaching that you embraced sort of the journey rather than the end product. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, teaching. Well, I started teaching at a point or I even entertained the thought of teaching and pivoting into that space after just doing, entrepreneurship and just being a creator, full-time creator. I was sort of unaware that I was burnt out.
Burnt out from filmmaking, or burnt out
from filmmaking and just chasing and just grinding and hustling. Yeah. I think that hustle culture, at least from our generational standpoint, it gets the best of us.
Yeah.
And I needed to pivot. And plus stability, making, ends meet with a stable job was kind of like a seed that was planted in my mind.
Yeah.
Even though I could have trusted my own journey and continued on, it would have just taken longer to get to that point of stability.
Right.
But teaching, pivoting into that space made me realize I was able to reflect back on my process and my craft, and like, oh, every semester I could do this over and over and kind of reframe how I created things based on how these kids are going to respond to the way they're creating now.
That's so interesting. I love that.
It made me more nimble as a creative, at least like, theoretically, not in practice, because teaching kind of locks you in, especially a tenured position, locks you in, and it's tough to be able to pivot in and out and experiment with these
to do your own
ideas.
things.
Yeah. At least on a full-time level, not just part-time and you just dabble here and there.
Yeah.
But
gotcha.
again, reframing that perspective, it made me more appreciative of the time that I put in, sacrificing all those hours and making all those mistakes, because now I can teach others how to avoid them at least.
Very cool. Can identify with a lot of that. Jumping ahead, let's talk a little bit about your work specifically. So, current creative endeavors,
current creative endeavors for Noisemaker Media. Right now, I'm just creating content for an online education platform. Just pivoting from teaching full time and kind of being in that space for 10 years. The natural transition was into that space. Fortunately, I'm editing tons of content for this online platform right now.
Nice.
Pretty much every quarter, there's over 10 deliverables to create. These are lessons that they send me, and I'm just creating visuals for it, and that's it. Whether it be on After Effects or sourcing Getty images and creating like 4 or 5 minute like lesson plans, and it's pretty fun to do that. But being home and just working at my own pace is kind of great.
Yeah. Did having kids change that for you a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with 2 kids.
Question,
but fortunately, my wife and I work from home, so we do have the opportunity to just pick up our daughters whenever we want. But I don't like being away, I want to put them to bed, by 8, 9 o'clock and wake up in the morning and not feel tired and bring them to school. I like that routine, So if there's other ways, and I'm finding ways to make money from home utilizing the skills and resources I have, it's better. I'm better off doing that.
Love that. So backing up a little bit, your website is so impressive, and there's so many absolutely cool projects on there. Any ones that you could isolate as being some of your favorites?
Looking back on it, when I was teaching again full time, especially video production and editing, I was forced to look at my work and break down some of the processes that I went through, the mindset that I had. I think the earliest stuff that when I was doing music videos full time, definitely 2010. That was like a year where I kind of broke out, both personally and also creatively, where I kind of stepped out of my shell as a creative. As a person, I was super shy, reserved, didn't really speak like this. It wasn't until teaching where I really was forced to be in front and center, be confident in the way I spoke, and kind of translate things and articulate ideas. But 2010 was groundbreaking because it propelled me forward creatively, and it put me in a place where I had to execute my ideas and believe in those ideas at the same time. And I tried everything. This is before I started getting paid decently for music videos, but it was just me experimenting. And having that opportunity to experiment without any kind of expectation, there's some freedom to that. That was some of my best work because I didn't have any expectation. There was no ceiling. Nobody was paying me tons of money to be like, hey, you have to hit X, Y, and Z to be able to meet A, B, and C. It was just me and the artist working, collaborating. So I kind of want to get back into that, but also I still want to get paid.
You need to make money. Yeah. What was it, though, in 2010? It was just a self-drive? You're like, this is the year. I'm going to make the jump. Was there any one thing that kind of made you pivot?
Well, I was doing music at the same time. I was still producing music until that moment. I was just chasing dead-end opportunities, both musically and interning for film productions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I should have pursued my own stuff, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. And it wasn't until that point where I'm like, what do I do now? Oh, just do it myself.
Do or die.
Yeah.
What does that look like? You would just call up bands and be like, hey, I've got an idea for you? Or how did you acquire those early projects?
Acquiring those projects was directly through just initial relationships that I've had in the music industry. Then it just snowballed. One project led to another. And remember, that was the early internet, YouTube era. So things went viral intentionally, without any kind of monetized kind of paywall, all that kind of inorganic kind of approaches. Everything was organic at that time. So one project led to another, and it just kept snowballing. And I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome. This is going to be a wave that I need to ride. I should have rode it a little longer, but I just didn't want to burn myself out.
You needed to eat.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges for you during that time?
When I started taking on bigger projects and the expectations were higher, then dealing with more attitudes, then just having to manage those expectations was definitely tough. Fortunately, I had a solid team, production manager, then a business manager slash, production manager at the same time. Then a crew, a solid group of people who I still keep in contact with. But if it wasn't for them, if it was just me one-on-one with individuals, that's tough. That's tough to do, especially if you're trying to do a big production. So the challenges were managing a crew, managing the expectations of the producer, then just trying to eat at the same time and make money out of whatever you're paying everybody else. It was tough to manage as an entrepreneur or a business person running their own production company.
As a creative too, it's a very specific skill. Some people don't have it.
Those moments made me realize that I like staying in my creative lane. I like exploring my creative space, but also creating in a way where I'm expanding my creative language.
Yeah.
If I go into the business realm, I lose time exploring that, and it doesn't make me a better creative because my competency is in this space.
Yeah.
I could do this really well.
Right.
I could run an academic program really well, but I'm more fluent in this space.
Right.
I should have
and happier,
but just like at peace too.
Yeah.
And I could just, again, if I could just make money in this space, I'll do that all the time. And I feel like there's a lot of creatives who are in this space and they're free, but sometimes they're tortured at the same time.
What? Elaborate.
You can torture yourself if you're in that space as a tortured artist and you're just trying to find perfection. But I feel like all these experiences that I've had, whether it be in education, running my own business, producing music for other people, allowed me to kind of break down this mindset of creating with the intent of perfection. Mm-hmm. Instead, I'm creating for excellence. So I think perfection is unattainable.
Correct.
But I realize excellence is a great alternative because there's actually metrics to that you could create a rubric, and teaching allowed me to break that down. I'm like, all right, I'm satisfied with this. And that made me create more fluidly.
I love that.
It's like when you're editing, you're a heavy editor too with all the content that you create. So I'm sure there's walls that you have to climb sometimes.
The YouTube motto is better done than perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's an honesty behind that process because you're not overthinking.
Yeah.
Right? You're just focused on the moment you're reacting.
Yep.
And it's going back all the way to the early years when we started creating first. We're all instinctive creatures back then, and we're just creating for the sake of creating. When we start getting paid, there's expectations to make it perfect. But if you're just producing and you just have this fluidity to you, you're not even thinking about that. You're just producing, and at the end, you have something amazing if you're flowing. Tapping into that flow state is tough. But you have to find a way to tap into that all the time without draining the resources. And I'm learning how to do that. And I think taking breaks is great, right? And not producing a lot. Scarcity is also good,
Stepping away. Playing with the codes.
Of course, Or even just doing something different besides creating,
Yeah.
In my studio, I have like my tiny studio, I wish I had a space like this. But I have like pretty much like a U-shaped space where on the left I have my editing station, then in front of me is my DJing station, then on the right is the production station. So when my ADHD just kicks in, I could go from one thing to another.
You turn to the other side.
But still kind of like but document everything that I'm doing, not video-wise, but recording stuff, or if I'm editing, if I'm rendering something out, I could just go to this space real quick. Again, going back to music and film competing, now I have this sort of controlled space where I could have both at the same time and not worry about making money off it because now I'm just freely creating.
That's amazing. From when you started to now, what are some of the major changes you've seen within indie filming?
I feel like that's such a pertinent question to ask, especially being now we're the older guard, right?
Yeah.
Because now we have so much of a sample set to look back, especially the 90s, the peak of humanity, right? Where we created and absorbed so much great content that was unfiltered. I mean, not ruined by social media, because like everything was in real time. You had to absorb everything right then and there. With social media, it's a different way of creating content, different way of consuming content, different way of curating content. But fortunately, we have the experience, the creative language to be able to look at that and be like, all right, we could create X, Y, and Z for this specific platform. I feel like creators now, anybody who's 18 to 25, they look at our past as like ancient times, like the late 1900s. I'm like, shut up. But
It's true, though.
it is. But at the same time, we have a better understanding of the overall way of creating content to engage people, because we were on the ground. We were doing things on the ground. We didn't have the digital conveniences to be able to engage with people. I don't know if you remember working for record labels and you had to do street team stuff. Do you remember that?
Well, we used to be on the other end of that on MTV. We used to get that stuff.
Yeah, so the promo stuff was tough. I did that primarily to get free records for record labels. But it was a grind just handing out flyers. So I feel like I could still connect with people from 20 years ago versus with people that I connected with 20 minutes ago on social.
Right.
So there was a shared moment there.
Right.
If you've ever been to the Summer Stage concert series in Central Park, one of my most memorable moments there was watching Black Star, Mos Def, and Talib Kweli's first New York performance or Summer Stage performance there. That was 98 or 99. I remember going there with 20, 30 other people, and it was like, it was a monumental thing, because at that time it was like the height of indie hip hop culture.
Nice. And
sharing that moment with others, if you just type that on, like, I went to Summer Stage on a comment that you're commenting on somebody else's, sub comment, there's a disconnect.
It's not the same.
They're going to get to an age where they realize they're not going to be the cool ones anymore, and they have to look back.
It's coming, folks.
It's coming. It's coming. And they have to look back on their past. What was that trajectory? What were the experiences? What were the lessons that they learned from 10 years ago? How can they connect those dots looking back or moving forward? So it's tough. It's interesting. I feel like we're fortunate that we grew up in an era where we had both digital and analog experiences. But if you're fully immersed in digital, what else do you know? Like, it's tough to be able to recreate those experiences, to be able to create a future moving forward. So
yeah, that's interesting. Process? Can we talk process a little bit? Like, how do you approach a project? What's the first thing that you would focus on? You have a client comes to you, says, I need this, 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 and this video. Like, how do you approach it?
It's tough. Every project's different.
Yeah.
But I feel like over time, as I've gotten better and more experienced, workflow. I think that's the one defining, especially as an editor, keeping everything tidy, keeping your timeline tidy, making sure that your workflow is tight so other people could, if you're sharing a project with somebody else, they could understand the madness of your timeline, right?
Yeah.
Or if you remember when we first started editing, we were a mess, right? We were trying to, it was a puzzle that we were figuring out as we edited. Like, the editing is still the same way, but now if you have a workflow, you have your assets organized, you have you're much tidier. Now you know what the picture looks like at the end. I'm pointing left to the timeline, right? Because the timeline's on this side.
Right. So you're speaking specifically editing now, or just like all like directing and shooting? You're like director for this project.
But I mean, editing was always the end game.
Was it?
It is. I mean, I love editing.
Why do you like editing more?
There's a lot of control, and you could work at your own pace if you don't have a deadline, right? But it's nerdy computer stuff. Like, I know about editing theory. I embrace all those aspects of it, but applying that is probably 20% of the process. It's all about the technique in editing. I feel like it's something that's always pushing me forward as a creative, because of all the different techniques, different platforms, aspect ratios that we're utilizing now. Then combining that with music editing, music production, it's all like in one. With production, everything is in real time.
This is true. You don't have the control that you have.
No, there's no control, and
we're control freaks.
That's why we edit.
We don't like sunlight.
No, we don't. Unless we have an LED that's 5600K. That's sunlight for us, right? But editing is a big part of who I am. I feel like I've embraced it a lot more over the years, especially with the projects I'm working on now. It's made me a better editor, especially with using Adobe Premiere and After Effects full time. Well,
that was my next question. software of choice? You're off of Avid, mostly Premiere and
Oh, I
After
haven't
Effects
used
now?
Avid
Yeah,
since
yeah.
film school because I
Nice.
can't afford it.
Yeah,
So,
this is true.
but editing, Adobe Premiere, After Effects, dynamically linking that. Then I use Resolve as well.
Nice.
So
For color correction
Yeah.
or just, nice.
for editing as well. It's fun.
Nice.
It's really fun to use because I'm actually using a Windows workstation now,
Oh.
super souped up. Like I nerded out,
Nice.
spent tons of money on it. It's top of the line.
That's
you know.
amazing.
Yeah, so it has its own dedicated graphics processor, a GPU.
So why don't you do your cutting on that?
I
then?
do, 100%.
Oh, okay.
100% cutting
So
on
your
that.
PC
Yeah.
Premiere?
I've been a
Ah,
Mac
nice.
user for 20 years.
Amazing.
Then I realized how under-spec'd and underpowered Macs
Yeah.
have been ever since the towers. The towers were just completely, those were like our lifelines as creatives, if
Yeah.
you remember.
Yeah, of course.
And we could upgrade those.
Yeah.
Now, like I started using the trash can, which is still an amazing
Did
little,
you? Oh my
little
gosh.
box or a
Wow.
little cylinder.
It
Still
should
have
be.
that. But the newer Macs were just not spec'd out correctly. They're super underpowered. I think the Mac Minis are great for like audio editing, but video, no. Mac Studios, the top of the line Mac Studio, an amazing piece of kit, but it's still last gen, mid-range last gen for $8,000 if you're going
Yep.
full spec.
Yep.
So I spent somewhere close to that on a top
Amazing.
PC, and now I go from rendering 10-minute 4K 60 timelines to 1 minute.
Get out.
Yeah.
Oof. And you found the PC version of Premiere is the same? No differences?
wonky.
Is it? That's my question.
Very wonky.
Is it?
Yeah. So
What,
to-
like, for example? We're going to nerd out for a minute, folks.
a little bit. The way Premiere is written for PC is not as fluid as it is on Mac.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see the reason why Creative Cloud doesn't utilize a lot of the top end specs, that if you have a top end GPU, you can't even utilize that to its fullest
Yeah.
potential. It's only a checkbox on the preferences end where you could use multi-threaded GPU processing.
Interesting.
Resolve actually utilizes dual GPU processing. As convoluted as the workflow is, I'm not very fluid with Resolve because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But at least the software can utilize dual GPU processing, which makes things super
I
fast.
bet.
So Adobe needs to figure that out.
Yeah. You hear that, Adobe?
I'm still I love After Effects.
Yeah.
You know, it's great software, but Premiere is super wonky when it comes. Today I just had some issues in terms of rendering out a sequence, a 30-second sequence, and it didn't allow me because there was some kind of effect that I was using that wasn't GPU
It
bound.
always happens with the effects and the rendering. That's
Yeah.
where you start seeing that
And
stuff.
it was telling me that I had like 30,000 pixels on the effect. I'm like, what? I don't even understand that. What do you? So yeah, stuff like that kind of irks me and makes me not want to commit fully to using Adobe Premiere and just try Resolve and
Yeah.
go full time on that. But
Nice.
After Effects just has so many great options, especially all the plugins, all the AI plugins that they're utilizing now.
Talk about them a little bit.
So it's not a perfect solution, but it's a great creative alternative. It's called Diffuse AE. It utilizes Stable Diffusion, which is a prominent AI software. It's open source for now until someone buys it out and completely locks it in. But right now it's open source, both photo and video, and you can utilize it on Premiere, which is kind of processor intensive.
And
but
what does it do?
it takes an image and
Uh-huh.
you could just type in a prompt and it'll create something for you in terms of the basic imagery.
Like generative fill.
Even
In
better.
photos.
It
Okay.
actually kind of masks over whatever video you have, or it could create something from scratch. I chopped up like scenes from a movie from Alejandro Jodorowsky and Ralph Bakshi. These films like that inspire, like Holy Mountain and The Lord of the Rings, the animated series, right? So I chopped them up in a creative way for social, 9:16, scaled them up using the software Topaz Video AI. So it's an AI upscaler that pretty much removes noise, and if you could convert 720 to 4K 60 without like any kind of aberrations or anything, then the software is super successful.
And it looks good.
It's okay. It's getting there. The footage has to be clean enough. So I've been able to take some of my 1080 stuff, 720 stuff from 2009, upscale it to 4K,
Wow.
even 8K.
That's
and it looks
amazing.
okay. It's
Wow.
not terrible.
Okay.
So I use that stuff or that specific software to upscale, then run it through After Effects to be able to get the highest resolution possible to be able to apply this specific effect
Amazing.
by Diffuse A or Diffuse AE. It's not perfect, but it's a good generative kind of AI thing that creates, generative art which I really like. You know, it's great for social media. Using Stable Diffusion is tricky too. It's like you have to be really tight with your prompts. Platforms sell it too. You could like license or use their platform, pay tokens to get some kind of imagery, or you could take the actual software, install it into your computer, and have your own local Stable Diffusion AI in your computer. So the prompts that I inputted start off with aesthetics. I like to define what the aesthetics are. And
so for example, give us an example of your prompt, of one of the
for
prompts.
that piece, I used primarily Ralph Bakshi art, then Jodorowsky's cinematography, then high detail and photorealistic. Then in terms of focal length, you could actually determine focal length, whether it be a fisheye, wide lens, really basic stuff for now. But you could actually input 50 millimeter lens, or 25 or whatever. And also color grading. You could identify the color grade type. It's not there yet. I don't think it'll ever be there, accepting the fact that it's a mess, but it's a beautiful mess.
Right. Amazing. That piece that we just saw, you said is on your website?
Correct.
So, all right. So people, if you want to know what we're talking about, we'll get the link at the end there.
Definitely for my generation of filmmaking, it's exciting because it's something that is immediate, and also I love generative art. It's giving me different ideas to build on rather than copying others. It's like I get the moral implications and ethical implications of it, but at the same time, as a creator who's been doing this for 20 years, we like new toys. You know, we like to create at the edge, and if AI is the edge, and if it gives us an edge, an advantage in terms of processing power, then so be it. I feel like if creators don't utilize this in the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to be behind by 36 to 48 months in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
That's how far it'll advance.
I agree with you.
Both for music and for film production.
Yeah.
So I think that's the beauty of creating now. We don't have to wait. We can just create, whether it be on our phones or on a computer, or if you're doing like top-end productions. I feel like AI will make things move faster.
Strictly animation, though, is what we're talking, mostly animation.
I have a green screen AI remover. You literally create a roto brush around a moving object, or After Effects tracks that person out.
Yeah.
Then just throw in the key and it knocks it out. It's not
Right.
perfect.
That's within After Effects already, though.
Roto brush,
Yeah,
but there's
roto
also
brush.
another one called green screen remover. It's these titles are stupid, but yeah, it does that.
It's a third-party plugin.
Yeah, but
gotcha.
it utilizes roto brush in a more effective way. Because roto brush can be wonky at times.
Yes, it can.
But if
Always at the end.
It's not AI generated, but if there's an AI component attached to it, it makes it respond to those outlines tighter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pivoting again, silly question, but falling under my process group of questions. Health-related tips or regimens for putting in long days. I love to hear these because, you know what, when I'm listening to other people's podcasts, I like hearing book recommendations. I like hearing like, tips for, whatever. Do you have any? And you can say no and we'll skip over it.
Terrible. I mean, my wife makes me a good smoothie every morning just to make sure I have all the nutrients in me to survive the day. So I thank her for that. Like I used to do for production shoots. I would do like a triple shot iced coffee, black, no ice, just straight up liquid caffeine, right?
And not have a headache at the end of the
No,
day?
I would live off that. 2 of those a day.
Get out.
One in the morning and one at night.
No.
And it was bad. I didn't know how terrible it was, until my wife was like, yeah, we need to switch this whole thing up. Here's water.
What does she put in your smoothie?
I don't know. Yeah, you have to ask her. It's green. It's sweet. Might have peanut butter in it. I don't know. It's good.
Nice. All right. Cool. So let's go to favorites. My favorites section. Films or TV series you're into these days? Do you watch anything?
Yeah, my wife and I watch a lot.
All right.
She's
What are you
my
watching?
partner in crime, watching a lot of stuff.
What are you into?
We just went through The Walking Dead, finally. We abandoned ship after season 4, way back when it was still in season. Then we just ran through so many shows this last 2 years. Definitely during COVID, we watched a lot. But definitely White Lotus is one of those amazing shows. The Succession. We finished Billions after they took a little hiatus. Then... we watch a ton of stuff. I mean, I'm not committed to one idea. It's just if there's a good story, then I'll finish it through. But if it's bad, I'm out of here. Regime is actually an interesting show on HBO.
What do you like about it?
Quirky.
Is it?
Yeah, it has that White Lotus kind of black comedy to it. So
who wrote that? Do you know?
I know Kate Winslet's in it. So
Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
she's always solid in it.
Cool. We'll have to check that. Music?
Mostly techno right now.
Is it?
Then that's what I produce. Then
Yeah.
I've always been into hip hop, but not like newer stuff.
Yeah. 80s hip hop?
No, I'm not that old. Come on. I'm a Tribe Called. I grew up on a
Nice.
Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul,
Oh,
Wu-Tang
the
Clan.
best. The
That's my era.
best.
I'm not a Run DMC guy. No, I'm not. I can't get down
I
with
don't know. You
that.
have to clarify when you say that.
Grandmaster Flash. No.
Yeah.
I respect that culture,
Yeah.
that era, but yeah, I grew up on ATCQ, De La. Ooh,
Nice.
I mean, those are still my go-tos.
And techno artists, particular?
There's one producer, Steph Mendesis. He's from Greece. I think he's from Ukraine, but he lives in Greece. But an amazing producer.
Nice.
Another producer, friend of mine, PS11 from Troy, an amazing producer as well. Always hit me up with memes and music and stuff like that. So I always stay in contact with them. There's so many producers. I can't even count them. It's
Nice.
such a bustling music scene, both locally and internationally, that
Amazing.
every week there's over like 100 new tracks released on Beatport, and it's tough to keep up.
So
Yeah.
what is it that you listen to? What is it?
Beatport, it's like a platform for DJs where they buy their music.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Beatport.
Beatport, correct.
Nice. 3 things you're into, can be anything. Doesn't have to be film or music. Favorite 3 things right now?
Well, I love to cook. I mean,
Yeah.
I cook daily for my daughters and my wife.
What do you make?
Well, since we have to make a lot of non-allergen based foods, recently I made like an Italian cream sauce using non-dairy sour cream.
Nice.
Then kind of like just use shallots, garlic, and just create like this sauce or actually grilled artichokes and shrimp. Then with fettuccine. So trying to take that base. Like my wife does it really well, where she's converted a lot of foods into non-allergy like based kind of meals, or even like cookies. She's made like cookies where there's no butter or milk in it. You know.
Amazing. So cooking, one of those things. Do you have 2 more or no?
Watching a lot of YouTube videos, primarily on PC building and also travel vloggers. I love watching.
Nice.
these
All right.
people
So
just traveling
shout
around.
out to some of your favorites for both of those.
Definitely number 1 would be Bald and Bankrupt. I know he's sort of controversial, whatever, but he's so brave in terms of traveling to India or Pakistan in the middle, just with and there's no editing to his videos. It's all rough. I love watching those vloggers because
Yeah.
their videos, not that they're polished, it's just you're in the moment. They're
Yeah,
present, you
right.
know? Not that I dislike well-polished edits. I just like watching these individuals in the moment and traveling and being in that space and interacting with different cultures
Totally.
as authentic as they are, you know?
It's kind of like a vacation for you too, though. It
But
just
I
is
like watching the process too.
Yeah,
Going
this is
back
true.
to the idea of process, I love seeing people who are free
Yeah.
of any kind of expectation. There's
hear
another travel vlogger, but she's a biker, and her name's Itchy Boots.
Okay.
Just discovered her
I
recently.
think I watched some of hers. They're good.
She's really well.
Yeah.
I don't know who edits her stuff, but she has 3 cameras, so I'm assuming it's a lot of content
Yeah.
to sift through.
Yeah.
But she has a mic as she's driving through Africa. She's driving through Africa now. I think it's season 7, episode 63. I don't know. Every other day there's a new episode.
It's amazing.
12-minute episodes.
How do they do it? They have a crew. They have a team.
She probably has
AI
yeah,
maybe.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, every other day she has a new release. But it's just the same thing, just traveling through different parts of the country, dealing with all the logistics of crossing borders and stuff like that.
Nice.
It's really interesting. And one more YouTuber, got to give him a shout out. Ghost Town Living. I forget his name, Brent something, but he took over a haunted mining town in California. I think he bought it out with some partners and converted it into a tourist destination.
Get
But he's
out.
been blogging or vlogging since COVID, since lockdown, because he
Wow.
bought the property and like literally February 2020, then COVID hit. Then he was just vlogging the entire time.
Fixing it up at the time?
Fixing
right?
it up. Then he had a
Amazing.
fire that completely tore down the motel the hotel that he had that he wasn't to use as part of the tourism aspect of it.
Right. Oh
But it's
my
been
gosh.
4 years consistently every other week or every other month he releases something.
That's
Full-fledged 35, 40-minute like documentary style videos.
Oh, I got to check it out.
Yeah,
Does he
it's-
have people living in his
He has
his
a lot
town
of
now?
help. Yeah.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the people that live there actually help him
Yeah,
with the
and
fixing?
people like other vloggers or
Oh.
YouTubers help him out in terms of like bringing supplies up the 8 Mile road.
Oh my gosh.
Super sketchy road, but like it's such interesting stuff out in the world of YouTube. Because I
Yeah,
remember YouTube the
it's
way,
true.
because YouTube had a phase, right? Like if you and I know YouTube early years was rough, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time entertaining, you know, like
was
chocolate,
gritty,
the
yeah.
chocolate rain era. That's what I call it. But if you look at all that content from that era,
Yeah.
it was just not polished. you
Yeah.
know? Then all of a sudden, these big producers and content creators wanted to create content from 2010 to 2014. That was
Yeah.
a different era because
Yeah.
now it became all about programming.
But it was a time to get in, though.
It was a time to get in to monetize off
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Then I believe from 15 to COVID 2020, it became the corporate era. I feel like
Yeah.
YouTube became super corporate.
Yeah.
Any content creator partnered up with a channel and
Yeah.
they started, creating very formulaic content and it became TV.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
they got sponsors and yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I think 2018 to now, there was this shift where vloggers left IG, Instagram, and
Yeah.
started documenting stuff on YouTube without the pretense and polish of all the other YouTube videos.
Interesting.
And it
Okay.
became a lot more interesting because it just became real again.
Yeah.
But it's still HD. It's not like we're watching stuff in
Right.
480 or 120 or whatever it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so YouTube,
So-
I'm always on YouTube. It's probably, I watch more YouTube than regular TV.
Yeah.
I'm
you
like
and
my
everyone
kid.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like my kids, except I hate Reels. I
None
don't
of,
like watching
none of my
Reels.
students have streaming subscriptions at all.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's all, I mean, some do, but it's mostly YouTube.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the third thing, do you have another?
Spending time with my daughters.
Yeah.
And my family, just being around them every day.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Nothing like it, folks. All right. Wrapping up. So this is sort of the advice-y section. Like one thing that you didn't know that you wished someone told you at the beginning of your career. What
Oh,
would
that's
that
a good
be?
one.
to you?
Not that I regret anything, right? You should never regret anything. But I wish I could tell my younger self to bet on myself, and trust the process, because the process will eventually lead you to a path of, not prosperity, but at least peacefulness, right? If I bet on myself, I think I would have been not further in my career, but a lot more fulfilled, And not that I'm not fulfilled doing what I'm doing now, but I feel like that. Yeah, I feel bad for that younger version of myself because I didn't bet on that person, and I had the opportunity to go all in instead of trusting just a little bit of sacrificing a little bit of pain. I went for stability, which isn't a bad thing, but at the same time, looking back on now I'm teaching young people to do that, to trust that, hey, your 20s are gonna suck. It's okay.
Hope you like ramen.
Yeah, it's gonna suck, but at the same time, it's gonna make you a better person once
Yeah.
you enter your 30s, because now all of those trying moments, also at the same time building relationships, and that struggle will make you a better professional or creative, a more empathetic individual in your 30s because you went through that struggle in your 20s, especially if you're creative. That's a time where I feel like I had the least amount of expectations creatively, and I was more in tune with my creativity. Not that I'm not in tune now, but then I was tapped in because I didn't know where to tap out.
Right.
It was either just tap in and that's it.
Right.
And I made some of my best music in the 2000s. Then with filmmaking, I was just connected with the community, and I was just creating with the skaters who I knew, and just made skate videos. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when we were younger, we just didn't know anything else. Now we know we have other responsibilities and expectations to meet. Now we're bound by time.
Yeah.
I feel like if I bet on that person, my younger self, that person would have a lot more time to explore what I'm intended to pursue with intent and purpose.
Gotcha.
And
I understand.
I feel like time is a limited resource.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
it just speeds up as you get older.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So trust yourself, kids.
I feel like most creatives now aren't doing this for the sake of pursuing it as some kind of purpose. They're doing it for product or for profit.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong way to go about it. You're going to get locked in or jaded by the time you're 29.
And burnt out.
Probably burnt out, but jaded, because if things aren't moving as fast as you envision it to be, because you see other creators just generating views and more followers, this whole following mentality is just toxic, because it limits you, it caps you from being creative. You have to create within a box.
And push stuff out, like just keep going and going and going.
And it's not allowing you to, break through and advance your creative language. And at the end of the day, that's going to be the one defining feature that we will have as creatives. That'll be our legacy. So if you don't practice in improving that, I feel like you're endangering yourself of being redundant quicker than you could ever imagine. So that's why I try to create, but at the same time, not to create for social media, but not like chase it. I just create on a whim, and I'm like, I post it. If people like it, and so be it. But yeah. Well, I think building relationships too matter. Yeah. But as I realize the older I get, the less friends I have. But at the same time, that's what
happens, folks.
It happens, but you value those who are your ride or dies, or the people that send you a really funny meme, like daily. Those are valuable people, because they get you. You're like on the same wavelength, even though you're not within proximity of them. You're still connected with them somehow.
And time could go by, and you next time you see them, it's like no time has passed, for sure. I think we've covered biggest lessons. That's kind of, is there anything you wanted to add?
Don't try to be like me.
Don't drink 2 big coffees black.
No, I think
drink your smoothies, folks.
Definitely addressing, your health and mental health, physical health and mental health in this profession has to be like number one. Yeah, financial health definitely matters, because every job is probably your last one. But if you're not sound, physically sound, mentally sound, working those 12, 14-hour days, it'll definitely wear you down.
Wreck you.
Yeah, it will completely change you to a point where you hate the craft. You never want to hate the craft, because your craft is your first love. So you just have to take care of that. Like, take a break, and walk away from it, then come back re-energized and with a different perspective. But if you don't take care of those two things, then you'll end up kind of pivoting from one space to another and not following a path that you could create on your own. You're kind of just like at the mercy of whatever opportunity is out there.
That's very well put. Lastly, tell everyone where they can find you, your socials, and your website.
You can find me at noisemakermedia.com. That's my production company. My artist page, it's a secret right now. You could find me, but I'm out there. I'm not trying to publicize that, for professional purposes. If you know what I do, then you'll be able to find me. But it's out there. It's not a secret. It's just, you just have to dig through all the notes.
Right. Dig, folks. Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here. And I really encourage everybody to check out his work and your music, too. Not linked from your main site, huh?
No, it's not.
Gotcha. We're going to find it.
You'll find it.
Mark, thanks again. And hope to have you back someday, too, for part 2.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Hey folks, if you like this podcast and you want to get a quick, very occasional email about my upcoming events, live streams, or giveaways, send your email address to merlebeckernews@gmail.com. That's merlebeckernews@gmail.com. I promise to never share or sell your email address. Also, check out my YouTube channel, DIY Film with Merle Becker, where I give short filmmaking tutorials every other week. Take good care, and I will catch you next time.